I'm David Tinsley, the head of SBA LSP Services for Lenders Cooperative, and I want to take a second to go through some of the changes that really stood out to me in the update that in the Quarter of Connect call that happened yesterday, where the SBA announced the 50-10-8 SOP that's going to be effective June 1st. So this is in no way a comprehensive list. It's just these are just some items that really stood out that are going to impact to me lenders how we should be interacting with the SOP, and as we're analyzing and looking at loans for consideration, making sure that we're just sort of really zeroing in on some of these items that are high impact. This, again, not an exhaustive list, and this is certainly not a replacement for, so there are certainly more formal training opportunities that are available, but this kind of lets me have an opportunity to just tell you a little about, focus on some of these things from my perspective, and then we can, and we'll do this over the course of several sessions. So I've broken this down into really 6 parts. The general categories would be program and eligibility changes, and that's going to have to be 2 just because that's a very large general category. So that will be 1 and 2. The 3rd session would be collateral and insurance requirements. The 4th is, for lack of a better word, the impact of removing do what you do. Number 5 will be documentation and closing updates, and then number 6 will just be, for lack of a better description, other considerations. It's things that don't neatly fit into any of these first categories. So if we're talking about program and eligibility changes, the first thing that really stood out to me is that if you're a delegated lender, you are no longer able to submit a loan through the GP process. And this has long been an ability that a delegated lender had. You have the option if there was a particularly complex loan, if it was something that was just slightly outside of your authority, but you supported, it was the option to be able to send it off to SBA to let them do the underwriting of it. And that way you could sort of rest assured and have the confidence that if it was just slightly outside of the SOP as you saw it, you could have their direct answer upfront in confidence that the guarantee was intact. You're not left with nothing to be able to help you as a delegated lender in this process. However, just simply submitting it to SBA for the answer is no longer going to be how this works. The way it would work is that there is going to be an exception process. So there will be an email box that as a lender, you can send an email to get a specific exception approved. So again, under the case of it didn't quite fit SOP, here's how you can resolve it. There will be an email box for that. And the second part is if there is a more complex structure, you would have the ability to email to get guidance from SBA directly. So similar to the way all lenders had access to the 7A questions. But this will work specifically. It's for delegated lenders. And in each of these cases, it's going to be up to the lender to provide a detailed summary because SBA is not going to be looking at a full loan file. You're not going to attach a bunch of documents for them to review. Your guidance and your question will be limited to how it is that you summarize it. So it's going to be key to really put detailed information together, present it to SBA in a way that they can give you an answer, and that would become part of the loan file going forward. But that's the process. There are 2 exceptions for the delegated lenders. One of them is if you're trying to refinance same institution debt. That does have to be sent. You can't approve that under your own delegated authority. And the second one is specific to the international trade loan. If for some reason the lien on the collateral is not going to be in the first position, that would be something that would be required to be submitted. But other than that, this is obviously aimed at being far more efficient. So if you have been trusted with that delegated authority, the SBA's expectation of you now is that you're approving all of these under your own authority. And so that was the thing that really I was a bit surprised to see that one first and foremost. I had not heard that be discussed prior to this, but it is an interesting move. I do like the fact that there's going to be the ability to get complex structures, get some really clear guidance from SBA back specific to your loan. I think that will be very helpful and allow for a far more efficient processing. But the next thing is borrower eligibility. The big shift from SOP 50-10-6 to 50-10-7 and then 7.1 is that the responsibility for determining that eligibility moved from the lender to SBA. And this has firmly been moved back on the part of the lender. It is fully the responsibility of the lender to determine the eligibility of the applicant, and you cannot simply rely on the borrower certification. This will result that we're going to see. There's already been a change made to the 1919. We're going to see another updated form that should be coming out, I believe, in the next three months. There will be a 60-day comment period out. on that, so you can look for that. But the other thing is, along with eligibility being updated, is that you do have to certify as a lender, both from a direct and indirect ownership perspective, that all of the parties involved are eligible persons. So there was a notice that came out that was talking about this requirement to certify beneficial ownership. And because that definition is different than FinCEN's definition of beneficial owner, it looks like there's a departure from that language, so that there's no misunderstanding there. So in the SOP 5010-8, it's going to boil down to whether or not all of the parties are involved are considered an eligible or ineligible person. And so that's going to be really important, because if it looks like ownership at any level would result in a loan not being eligible if the person doesn't meet this category of eligible person. And just as a side note, to me, that you need to be doing a CAVR search. Technically, that was removed under the 5010 7.1 and the 5010 7, but this is one of those things that you need to look at all the parties. If you weren't doing this, I heavily recommend that be a part of your process going forward. And then the next big update that I saw was this franchise directory being reestablished. I feel like that was received with generally very favorable reviews on that. I think it left quite a few lenders confused as to what needed to be done. How do you confirm that a franchise is actually eligible? And so I think this was a welcome change, or more like a welcome reestablishment. The keys there, so there will be an updated process here to do that. So if there is an addendum in place right now, the directory as it is reestablished, you would want to make sure that the addendum was signed, and then there, as of I believe August 1st, the new process will be, if they're on the directory, then essentially that means they've already the franchisor has taken the steps to become eligible in the process. So you can take the time to go back. Obviously, review all of the procedural notices. There were quite a few that have been issued over the past, I think, 60 days for more clarification. And then one more I want to address in this particular piece of it is that the 7A small dollar loan program specifically has been reduced. So previously you had the loan was up to $500,000. It was raised with the 5010-7. It has been reduced back to the previous upper limit of $350,000. Now, to point out here, that has not changed the express loan. The express loan remains at $500,000 today, and this is not a single loan limit. This is loans in total. So if there is more than one 7A loan and combined they're in excess of that $350,000, you would be considered above that limit. It would have to be treated like a standard 7A loan. And then I'd say one final piece that I want to include along with that, for the small 7A loan, the SBSS score, which is part of that process, the submission, and that's SBA's piece. When you submit it through eTran, there was the minimum score requirement was 155. That has been raised to 165 with this update. So that doesn't mean that if it's below 165, you can't do the loan. However, under 7.1, there were multiple options that the lender could follow to be able to get the 7A small loan that was below the 155 threshold. There were other ways you could get it approved, which included treating it like a standard 7A loan. However, the other options that were available to you as a lender, those are no longer available. So you have your option. You have a minimum score now of 165 to be able to do the 7A small dollar loan. If it falls below that threshold, you would treat it like a standard 7A loan. If you still support it, want to approve it, you just go through the standard process. And so that's the main pieces I want to cover here in this first part. In the second video, I will continue with the rest of the updates under program and eligibility changes. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at the address here. Or if you want to visit our site, there's a question submission form there that you can use. Thank you for watching this session, and I'll see you in the next one.